the East Lyme Board of Finance special meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. It is 6:32, and I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I just want to point out we're back in our home base tonight after our meeting last night over at the high school. So I know I had a couple people say they had trouble getting access to the meeting. I just want to let everybody know in case they're looking for it. It is up on the website on YouTube. So if you want to watch last night's Board of Ed presentation to the Board of Finance, it should be up there right now. Next on the agenda is delegations. Delegations is the part of our meeting where members of the public can address the Board of Finance on any item that is on our agenda tonight. Is there anyone here from the public that wants to address Board of Finance? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Tonight is continuing our budget reviews of the different town departments, and first on the agenda is information technology. This is Department 109, and would like to welcome Dan Cleary. This will be his first time here presenting the IT budget, so welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Dan, just in case you didn't watch old, typically you just kind of walk through your budget, any major increases or decreases, and kind of walk through the reasoning.
So I think you'll see kind of across the board. So what we're looking to do kind of overall is you'll see some decrease in the amount of consulting hours we're using with outside contractors. Since starting with myself and Carmen, we've been able to take over most of the day-to-day operations, so we're not relying so heavily on outside resources for that. The plan going forward is to use money with those outside resources to do things beyond our day-to-day capabilities, so bigger projects, rollouts, deployments, things like that. Where we need an extra set of hands, we can call on that, and we'll have some money for that. But the day-to-day operations and long-term sort of strategic planning and maintenance of everything is really brought back in-house with that. There's some slight, so there's some down there, and then there's some a little bit of increase in money spent on training. That's both for internal IT staff, but it's also for information security training for all of town employees, with all the ransomware and cyber attacks that we hear about, getting everybody kind of at least a decent level of knowledge, basic level of knowledge, what to look for, what not to click on, that sort of thing, for all the town employees will go a long way. That's our number one point of entry, is people clicking on things that they thought were real or were malicious. So training on that end, so to increase there. There's some change. We're in the process right now of renegotiating our copier lease. The numbers that were in there, we're going off of the last few years' numbers with the addition of adding a copier at the police department in order to replace a couple of really expensive to operate DeskJet printers, small printers, but they cost a fortune to keep resupplying. But I believe that number in the end actually looks like it's going to come down. This year we are at the end of a 5-year lease, and we have we'll at the end of this fiscal year we'll own all the copiers. So not all the copiers will need to be replaced exactly at 5 years. So the idea is to stagger that over a few years. So we'll replace the ones that are immediate need with additions that we need. Some of the prices have gone up, so I'm not exactly sure where that number is going to fall. But instead of a straight rip and replace every 5 years, we're going to stagger that out to try and save some money and extend the life of the equipment. I don't think there's been any other major changes. There was some changes to GIS hosting to support GIS storage for scanning all of the documents downstairs in planning and zoning. That was sort of contingent on their getting that project rolling. Other than that, I don't think there's any major numbers. The rest is basically just continued support for support contracts for the town, for the PD. Slight increases to our internet bandwidth across the town as everything is going up. We're increasing the number of cameras at PD that the PD relies on across the town, and we're finding we're kind of hitting the cap on a lot of those connections. So we'll be just kind of steadily increasing those as the year goes on. Any questions for me?
You guys have any? I just, from sort of a big picture, you know, that you're sort of our first real full-time IT director. You know, if you're looking out over a couple of years, are you seeing like, here's a project that, you know, we really want to do and start thinking about budgeting for over time? You know, I know cyber insurance is something that, you know, we look at, and you have to have a lot of things in place in order to qualify. So just curious what your
I've been in
plans are.
discussions with Kevin from finance, and we've gotten some of the requirements. A lot of the requirements are time on our part, time and training for town employees. Things that we can already implement, we just have to, again, spend the time to do so, and the employees. The things that cost money are kind of slated in what we're already doing. There's a capital request there. Some of our server hardware is getting to the end of its useful life, and included in that is a longer term plan for secure offline storage. So something, if a ransomware attack were to occur, worst case scenario, if our backups got encrypted, if we didn't have access to our data, we'd have a offline set of data sitting there, which we have. We have parts of that together now. In a case of a catastrophic emergency, we have backups for everything, for normal file loss. But as far as everything being encrypted and totally lost, we would have this kind of arc of data that would be off to the side that doesn't get touched by anything from the outside world. So that's included in the normal server rotation for that equipment being replaced. And then longer term on the computers, the computer equipment, so PCs and laptops across the town, that's run a really tight budget, and currently it brings us to about an 8% replacement a year, and at 120 computers, that puts us, it's almost around 10 years with really stretching the computers to get the full life. So what happens is the money gets pulled from other places, or other departments scramble for money. And one of the things is trying to bring all of the IT world under one helm, just so we can see what's going on. And with that, so there was a request to increase that would put it about 16 to 20% replacement a year, which puts us on target for a normal PC life cycle. So within a few years, we'd be on a normal PC life cycle, and, without additional expenditures. It would just be part of the ongoing maintenance. And again,
I got a text that people can't hear us.
Okay.
So I don't know if we're you need to be a little bit closer to the mics. I don't know what the volume is on there.
We have the volume up on that?
You just got to get really close to the.
Sure. Yeah, so there's an overarching effort to kind of bring all the IT islands, right? So like the PD is kind of its own island, community center would be its own island, and bringing those all under one. We've seen it already where by doing so, we can see initiatives in certain areas of the town and in different departments that are being duplicated or efforts that might be being duplicated in other parts of the town. So if we can get that all on the same page and under one thing, it tends to save and make the town more streamlined in the long run.
More powerful microphones?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to ask the same question.
Sure.
I've asked every year, consolidate in coordinating that with the schools as well, and we always get the same answer that it's apples and oranges. But I'm encouraging that you look for those opportunities too to bring the schools into that consolidation.
Sure,
under one roof.
it's not anything that's come up thus far as integrating with the schools, but there's certainly overlap there. I'm sure that we could work on in the
Yeah.
future. Yeah.
We say that to the schools, we say that to you.
Sure.
And we get, we've been saying this for a long time.
Yeah. No, and again, I'm new, so
Yep.
that being segregated was just that was kind of how it was.
Thank you.
We have, because here again, we have our own IT staff. School still uses a consultant, so the concern was if we started right now without a formal program that they would have buy-in with. We didn't want our IT director for the town side spending most of his time, at the other place.
No, I understand that.
And we have reached out.
Yeah, okay. Is that your question?
Yeah, Peter's correct. It's something we ask every year, and it just seems to make sense, especially the last couple of phrases where you were talking about bringing the various islands under
Sure.
a common infrastructure, or however systematically you want to.
Yeah, there's benefits for that across hardware, software, licensing, all of that stuff. If we can get it all under one, so yeah.
Right, and it seems as though the town and the schools have used different vendors for the service and.
Yes. Yeah.
And it'd be nice to be able to coordinate that a little bit better too.
Agreed.
I think there'd be some cost savings.
Agreed. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
One thing, since we actually now have a director to augment what we already had, very capable service from Carmen, but now we have a two-person, and so much of what we outsourced. Once you have we have ownership on now, and I think once you have that ownership, you can find those better ways to do things. So, the one thing we probably should have done is gotten that full-time director position a long time ago, because we're seeing benefits on our side by leaps and bounds. Between Carmen and Dan, things are just working extremely well.
Instead of, you mentioned we got servers that are coming up for replacement. Are we looking maybe at offsite data storage or data services, or
So there's some.
storage that could preclude
There's
us,
some. Yeah. So there's some.
maintaining our own equipment?
There's some benefit and some fallback still with maybe going with a cloud service for a lot of our things. Right now, the trend that we're working towards is for a lot of services that it's a kind of a hybrid model. So it's cloud where we need, but the critical infrastructure stays here under our control, at least for the time being. And like I said, there's a number of services that are moving out to the cloud. All of our email and exchange services, even before I started, had migrated to a hosted platform, and it's been very successful. For a lot of our internal applications, they don't necessarily lend themselves well to hosting, but it's not something that we're against in the future. But there will be at least some level of base infrastructure that will need to stay here.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up about the offsite backups, because I've had clients, and that's what saved them by having those offsite backups. They could just tell them the ransomware guy to
Right.
sand and
we
we're
do
back in business.
We do some pretty vigorous backups within the town with multiple copies in multiple different locations. So backups for one site are not just living in one site; they live at other sites, and we're able to do that with the interconnectivity that's already within the town. So we have it's known as local offsite backup. So we keep a copy of data. There's copies of the data at the PD for town hall. There's copies of data at Old Dispatch for a number of different places that point there, just because we have the infrastructure to do that. So instead of paying someone to hold the disc for us, we kind of do it ourselves.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Cleary?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, the next 4 items on the agenda, we have Chief Finkelstein. First one is going to be Emergency Management 214. There you go. No, you go.
Not for this one, no, just for the next one. So thank you for having us. Julie Wilson, the Deputy EMD, will be presenting the budget, and we'll be here for any questions you have, so.
Oh, great, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? We have a pretty good budget coming forward. We have a 1.04% increase this year. The salary changes are all pretty much contracted amounts. We did have a reduction of $1,000 in the EOC staff activation. Fingers crossed that we don't have a lot of major storms, and that will, hold status quo. But it's a good place to take some from if we need to. The communications director and the radiological officer, we put in for a 2% COLA, which brought that up to 1809. Longevity shift differential, that's just part of the contract deal. Let's see, building maintenance, this is the only change per se. We were requesting the $2,250 building maintenance fee that we used to have when we were at the old building. Our expenses all currently are all rolled into the town's building maintenance program. So instead of giving that back, we do have a good source to use that for, and that's for where's my notes? Sorry. The additional resources when we have a large function in town, such as a parade or celebrating Lyme, such type of thing, depending on current events, if there's something big happening around, the United States, and we're worried about any kind of thing, I don't want to say bad actors, coming in, we try to take as many extra precautions as we can. And there are certain things that we are very useful to help keep the event safe that we don't have access to ourselves as equipment in town. So we reach out to area departments for resources. So that money comes into play there. It's just a kind of like a security blanket per se for those funds. So that's why we're requesting those stay in the budget. Radio maintenance is remaining the same. Telephones, there's a reduction in that. That's because of since moving everything to the new building, there's been a reduction in the cost of that. So that was a plus. Training, just a little bit of a bump. Some of the memberships fees for the chief and I have gone up a little bit, so there's a minor increase in that. Transportation allowance, I'm probably going to use close to the $500 this year between all the trainings and meetings and stuff that I've been able to go to since COVID has kind of, knock on wood, gone away a little bit, and it affords me the opportunity to go to more meetings and be in person and network with our regional partners. Miscellaneous supplies, the only changes there are really the VOC software that we purchased using ARPA funds. It was a $12,400 expense, I believe. That's the emergency management software that's going to help us tremendously with efficiency in the department to be able to offer our residents online forms for filling out information that are automatically updated on an annual basis. Emails get sent out. So all the information for if somebody needs assistance with evacuations, or if they need assistance with power during a storm because they are medically dependent on their power, we have a special list of our residents so that we know who needs help. That will automatically update itself. Right now, we spend hours, making sure that's kept up to date. We're also branching that into the police department as well, and a lot of their forms are now going to be available online for residents to be able to fill out and submit instead of having to mail it in or come and drop it in person.
How do people know that that's available to them?
It's always been, you mean the one for the
The whole-
evacuations?
Yeah, for people with
That one has
special needs.
always been done through the state when they send out the Millstone Nuclear Power Safety booklet every year. That's around the same time of year they would mail these forms to residents, and every resident would get one. And then they would fill it out by hand. It would go up to the state, and then the state would send down packages at a time to us, and we'd have to input all that information into a spreadsheet. So imagine, the efficiency of people just being able to enter their information, or, if it's a loved one that's doing it for them, it automatically gets populated into the software. And the spreadsheet is there, and it automatically knows when it was submitted, and it will automatically send a reminder to update. Because the problem we were having was we had people that were on the list from 2011 that we hadn't heard from since, and they were supposed to update every year just to say no changes, or I've moved, or my mom passed away, or anything like that. So we had this list of over 500 people. We've been able to work very hard to get that consolidated down to an accurate number. We're about 250 now. So I would say probably within the next month we're going to have a lot of these forms going online, and we'll put it through social media announcing that they're going to be available. But I think the software is going to be a huge help to not only to us, but to the residents for making things a lot simpler. And that's about it in a nutshell. Anybody have any questions?
I asked mine. So. Do you,
Go ahead.
I'm all set.
Okay. The emergency resources, that's a new category, a new,
Yes, it's the money that was in the building maintenance fund. We're asking it to be moved down to that.
it's not an existing fund or existing budget line.
It's not an existing budget line. We're just asking to kind of rename the building maintenance funding for that purpose.
oh, I think that's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
So next we have dispatch, 215.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do a PowerPoint for all the departments at once, and then we'll discuss each budget or answer questions that you have, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, excellent. Mike, you want to come up? You want to come up, Jeff? So kind of just starting with a PowerPoint to go through what we do as the three departments that are under that one roof. As you know, we consolidated the building last year, which was a tremendous benefit to the town. It has done very, very well, and I think you're starting to see a lot of efficiencies in the management running. As we said in the emergency management budget, the phone account or the phone line has been able to significantly drop. That's because of the technology we're using. We're bringing phones from 3 buildings, really upstairs and downstairs of the old dispatch, the PD, bringing them under one roof. We're doing SIP trunks with the fiber, so there's a lot of things we're trying to do there with technology. So the mission statement of the department, East Lyme Police Department, is to serve the public in a professional manner. We take on the responsibility of making our community safe for all those that live, work, or pass through our community. We strive to make our roads safe for motorists and pedestrians alike. It is our responsibility to work with other agencies and the public we serve and treat everyone with respect and dignity. Now, that is something that is on the wall when you come into the police department. It is also very much a driving statement in the accreditation process that we're currently undergoing with the state of Connecticut. So, we're really trying to push forward brand new policies, brand new, again, the mission statement to make sure that we're upholding that at every turn. So, backwards. Sorry. Core values. Respect for all persons, both in and outside the organization. We will inspire respect and confidence in the public trust by performing all duties impartially and respecting the dignity of all citizens and fellow employees. Strive for excellence in all of our activities. We value professionalism in a team effort to provide effective public safety services. Provide a high level of customer service at all times. We will work cooperatively with other town, state, federal agencies, and the citizens' organizations to to provide the highest level of service to our residents, businesses, and visitors, and we will seek the highest level of ethical and moral conduct in our on-duty and off-duty activities. One thing that I think we've all seen over the past several years is that focus on policing, that focus on the respect from the community and respect from the police. And I think that we have done an outstanding job in our town, and we continue to try to do better each and every day as we continue to do that job. But we make sure that those core values are upheld every opportunity that we have as police officers dealing with the public on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that we ascribe to is the 6 pillars of 21st century policing, which came out in 2015 from a study on policing nationally, and looking at the ways that police departments do a better job of serving their communities. So those 6 pillars are building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education, and officer wellness and safety. You will see that interwoven in everything we do in our agency, and you'll also see it inside many of these budget items as we're discussing them, to go back to the reason why we're doing them in many cases is to make sure we're upholding those 6 pillars and making sure that we're doing the best job possible for our community. So what we do. Police Department provides police services to the residents of the town of East Lyme. The Police Department Dispatch Center handles all 911 calls originating within the town of East Lyme, provides dispatching for the East Lyme Police Department, Flanders Fire Department, Natick Fire Department, East Lyme Ambulance. It provides monitoring and dispatch services for the East Lyme Water and Sewer Department, and provides control for the Channel 22 services. The East Lyme Waterford Animal Control Division provides animal control services for both of those towns combined as a regional resource. So the East Lyme Police Department, in a nutshell, is responsible for maintaining the safety and security of all residents and visitors. Currently, the resident population is 18,693. This does not include the visitors to the town's many beaches, shops, parks, who significantly add to the town's population and traffic. That's an important piece. When you look at the town of East Lyme, you go downtown on a Saturday, it isn't just the 18,600 people that we have in town. Tremendous amount of people want to come to our community. We see that every single day, and more so in the summer. Our current staffing is 28 full-time sworn officers. Our minimum patrol that we require in each shift is 1 sergeant and 2 patrol officers, responsible for 34 square land miles and miles of coastline and waterways. Our staffing is at 1.84 staff per 1,000 population, which is now the 10th lowest in the state. If you recall, last year, before we added an officer, it was 5th lowest. So we are starting to creep up just a little bit. Reminding you, the staffing rate for the state of Connecticut average is 2.51. And that includes police dispatch support services and animal control. So it's taking an entire agency, putting it in there, and that's how they come up with that number. I know, Richard, we had a lot of conversations about how those numbers were derived in last year's conversation. So just for comparative purposes, because I believe it's important sometimes to see, because we get questions all the time. Well, this department can do X for a service. This department can do Y. Why can't you do it? And many times, unfortunately, it comes down to staffing and funding. So just to kind of compare us with other departments that are like size and like communities, with Old Saybrook, Stonington, Waterford, just so you can kind of see, we have 28 officers, $2.9 million budget, 18,000 population, 1.84 staff per 1,000. Old Saybrook, which has a population of 10,000, has 25 officers, a budget of $5.2 million, and staffing of 3.3. Stonington with 39 officers, budget of $6.6 million, population of 18,300, and a 2.8 staffing per 1,000. And Waterford with 49 officers, 6.4 million, 19,571 for population, and 3.19. So again, only showing that for comparative purposes when you start hearing those questions of why we cannot do certain things. I do think, and I'll show this with the stats in a few minutes, I think we do a tremendous job doing much more with much less. However, that isn't always the best way to do things, and why I think we come back a lot of times saying staffing is very, very important to us, and why this police commission has put together the staffing proposal that they had. So what is our profile? We have 28 officers. We have 2 in the academy with an estimated December of 2023 on patrol date. They will graduate in July, and the FTO program should take them through November into December. A chief, 2 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, 2 detectives, 1 federal task force officer, 1 school resource officer, 15 patrol officers, 1 part-time officer, 8 full-time dispatchers, 4 active part-time dispatchers, 2 full-time ACOs, and 2 support personnel in the department. So what are our stats? For 2022, we have 16,167 calls for service, 1,654 motor vehicle stops, 245 traffic accidents, 189 pieces of evidence were taken into the evidence room. Moving to an independent police department, moving to our old building, this is something now that is incumbent upon us. We were sharing those facilities with Waterford for the first 3 years of 4 years of independence. Now we have that ourselves. We have 319 arrests in 2022. It's a 32% increase over 22 over 21, and a 28% increase before that in 21 over 20. Force, because this is always the focus of policing in society, and I think it's important for the people in our town that make decisions to know these things. We only use 4 use of force. Force was only used 4 times, in 319 arrests. Only 2 of those are physical force. Because understanding in the state of Connecticut, if an officer points their taser at somebody or point their firearm at somebody in a felony traffic stop, it's considered force. Pretty good numbers. That means your police officers are out there every single day doing the job, de-escalating situations, handling it professionally, and getting through situations and getting to a conclusion without having to use physical force in very many cases. And I think that's a testament to the work that they do and the training that we receive, and we'll talk about that in a second. We have a 58.7% increase in criminal investigations in 22 over 21, and it was already a 34% increase 21 over 20. Our clearance rate for cases, which is very important, is 43.04%, and the state average is 30.22. So that means if you come to the police department with a complaint, a criminal, anything, there's a 43% chance that we're going to be able to come to a successful conclusion and make an arrest or close that out knowing who did the case, which, again, is much higher than the rest of the state and the state average. So throwing all of those things together is a picture of how busy things are with our department. And it's busy with having less staffing than we should have at this time, and also less staffing than the other departments around us, but our numbers appear to be higher in many of those cases. So I think, again, it's a testament to the officers that you have and we have out in the community, because the job they're doing and the feedback that I get on a daily basis, and I can't speak for anybody on the Board of Finance, I know the First Selectman is always getting compliments, the Police Commission is always getting compliments on the job that's being done out there. So all of those arrests, what were they for in 2022? 31 of those were for assault, 54 for breach and disorderly conduct, 65 for drunk driving, 46 for failure to appear in court, 55 for drug offenses, 37 for larcenies, 13 for violation of probation, and 17 for violation of protective orders. So they're pretty well spread out with a lot of different types of cases. So highlights, what we've done this past year. As we've talked before, you were all instrumental in getting the Axon body cameras and in-car cameras, the upgrade of the car cameras and the advent of the body cameras. Could not have been a better thing that our community has done or any community has done, I think. I am a huge advocate of body cameras, and I think all of our officers to a T would say the same thing. They are an outstanding tool that we have in our communities. We have 20,156 video uploads in 2022. So a lot of video is going into that, a lot of interactions, a lot of things that have to go up. And as Mr. Cleary spoke about with cloud service, you remember when we went with Axon, one of the conversations was cloud versus server. Very, very happy we went with that cloud-based, because this unlimited type storage has never been an issue. So I think that it's a very, very good thing for us. Power DMS is a software that we use. Right now we're working through the academy for the past week has been inside of our system reviewing all of our policies. And then on April 19th they will do a visit to us, and hopefully at that point we will be able to jump through and have our first accreditation that we need. So I think we're well on our way to do that. But we have 184 policies that or documents that have been created into this web-based program. Just to show how important it is. It's something that's required and something we need, but also professionalizes us, allows the academy to go into our systems, not have to look at paper, but remote in and look through all of our policies to make sure everything is good. Officers now can be issued policy over this system and have to sign in. We can log when they sign in. We can log when they sign them. So the accountability is so much better than trying to run down a paper copy that may get lost, may get destroyed, something may happen to it. It won't happen in this case. Rapid SOS and Prepared Live have been put into dispatch. If you recall, Lieutenant Masick was involved in that boat rescue that took place, where the dispatchers used the great ingenuity to ask the individuals to FaceTime them because they didn't know where they were. It worked very well, but now we have Prepared Live in dispatch, which allows through the 911 system them to utilize your cell phone to get video, to get locations. Rapid SOS is a system that goes beyond what the state 911 system does. It allows us to pinpoint exactly where a 911 caller is and where they track and where they move. And we can look at that sometimes and see where inside of a house somebody is. You can't see inside the house, but in a map you can see they're upstairs, downstairs, right side, left side, which is certainly very, very important when you may have a victim that you can't find if they were down, unable to talk, but just down 911, so certainly very good. Well, we're migrating, excuse me, to a completely interoperable radio system. So we are going to be shared with our own system, Waterford's system within London, as well as the state system. What this does is it allows us to be really one of the most interoperable departments around, because we then will have the ability to speak to any department that we deal with anywhere in the state of Connecticut, which is a huge benefit when not only we're going out of town for investigations, but certainly we all know crime is not bound by borders. So many, many times something starts in one town, goes to another, and now we will have the ability to fully communicate with anybody, not having to relay through dispatch, which everybody knows. You play a game of, that phone tag game, information gets changed, gets lost, and is delayed. So certainly it's better to do that. We had our inaugural Citizens Police Academy this past year, which was a resounding success. We had a lot of town residents that took part in this. We are looking forward to having our next session, where it is a 9 weeks where they come in and learn everything about law enforcement. And I will tell you, and please, if you have the opportunity to speak to somebody who has attended this, they can't speak highly enough. The letters I received after, the emails I received after, but each week they didn't want to leave. They would stay over time asking questions because they truly wanted to know what policing was and what their police officers did, and got a great appreciation of what our agency and our officers do. And we had so many officers that came out to donate their time to do that. Successful National Night Out. If any of you did attend that, it was an outstanding program that we put on at the Flanders School in the Miracle League Field. We look forward to doing that again next year. Again, rave reviews from the public, and these are the things that get the police involved in the communities. It gets people to see what police officers do, interact with them, see that human element, but it also helps our officers because it allows them to interact more freely with people in uniform, in a public setting, because that is good for everybody in our society. Our annual Tip-A-Cop for Special Olympics and Toy Drive, sponsor for holiday families. Our police department tries to get involved in as many activities socially and town-related as we can. So training, because training is important. One of the biggest focuses that people talk about, we don't have to go through all of this, but just so you can start to see the tremendous amount of training that officers, number one, have to go through each and every cycle for their 3-year certification, or yearly for many of these, but also elective trainings that we send officers to hone special skills. But when you're looking at things such as their de-escalation training, ethics and anti-bias policing, cultural awareness, police and the law, human trafficking, citizens with special needs, on and on, officers are mandated to do all of these trainings on a constant basis. So your officers and the officers in the state of Connecticut are amongst the most highly trained that exist in this country. So, I always say, and I speak to this often, when you see an incident that happens in another state, another part of our country, it doesn't mean that it happens here, because the training standards are so vastly different in the state of Connecticut compared with the rest of the nation. So again, just another look at that. We have officers that are going to integrated child sex crimes, drug recognition experts, advanced accident reconstruction for our accident reconstruction team, de-escalation training, which is, again, crucially important to learning that. Car seat technicians, we now have 3 officers that do that for our residents for free. They inspect car seats, they install car seats, a service that everybody really wants, and for a while, unfortunately, kind of fell by the wayside. So again, a lot of trainings. We can make this PowerPoint available to anybody who wants it after for you to take a look at. So the budget increases, to go through very, very quickly, and then we'll hit each of the budgets. Employee salaries are 2.75 contractual. We've asked for the addition of 2 officers for salary, equipment, and tuition for the police academy for them. Overtime to meet the actual needs, that was the increased request. If you remember last year, that was one of the areas that we've had a discussion with you, and it was cut to try to save costs. We're coming back this year to say, this is where we are actually this year, and trying to get back to what we project next year to be. Foot patrol and parade, increased visibility through Main Street during the summer, certainly something that we want to increase as Main Street gets busier, as more and more businesses are added to Main Street. We want to get back to having more officers assigned down there. Unfortunately, with the 2-person minimum patrol with 1 sergeant, the South Patrol encompasses all of your beach communities from Waterford to Old Lyme up to the middle school area. So it's very easy for that officer to get tied up and not get to spend time on Main Street. So generally, we've had an overtime shift in the summer that has worked sporadically to say we can put somebody on Main Street on foot in a car, very visible. We want to do that more often, and that's from feedback from a lot of our businesses, Main Street Association. And again, the look that Main Street is getting much, much busier. There's much more development. There's more businesses, more restaurants going down there, and we need to have a presence there to deter anything from happening in that area. Training, the academy tuition for the new officers, which I said. Boat storage and maintenance, we realize the costs are increasing as everything in our society seems like it's going up. Marine seems to go up a little bit more. I don't know why, but anybody who has a boat knows boat fuel is more expensive than road fuel. Same thing for all the other parts and everything we do. And we're asking for the addition of 1 cell phone for we're probably going to do a change with our investigators. Law Enforcement Council has an increased assessment. This is the organization that does all of our recertification training, our promotional testing, and also runs the police academy now for Southeastern Connecticut, which both of us are large parts of. We still only pay a very small amount for the services that we get from that organization. Boat fuel, rising costs again. Uniforms, the cost for outfitting the 2 new officers. Canine maintenance, we're looking to add a 2nd canine onto the force. Right now we're down to single. We were at 2 until we had 2 canine officers go off at the same time. We went back with 1, and now incrementally we're trying to 2 years later add a 2nd one back in there. So that maintenance is veterinary bills and food, and that's what that funds. Training supplies, taser, firearms, and body cameras for the new officers. Public relations. National Night Out, Citizens Police Academy, both overwhelming successes, both things that we're getting constant calls to do more of, but they're not free events to do. Last year, we looked for donations. We had officers chip in and do it themselves. So we have a moderate increase in that line item, asking so we can try to put more of these events on or fund the ones that we're currently doing. And testing and accreditation fee that we have to do for CALIA as we get to that point, and employee testing, which are now mandated, the ones that are mandated through the Police Accountability Act. So that is our 3 departments in a nutshell, and certainly now we can go through however you want to go through the 3 budgets. You want to go line by line, or do you want to do it a different?
Just wondering whether it makes any sense if people have questions about what you just went through, so
Perfect.
while it's still kind of fresh in
Absolutely.
everybody's
Yep.
mind. I don't know whether anyone else
Just take a
has.
second.
No?
Rich?
I've got one. The slide where you had the comparison of the personnel and also the budgets, it seemed like the 3 towns that you had as comparators had vastly larger budgets, not just more police officers, but like Old Saybrook, it seemed like it was almost double what our budget was.
Right. Yep.
And what are they spending on? Do you have an idea that
I can't
we're not
answer.
spending
I
on?
can't answer for Old Saybrook's budget. I certainly see the same thing when I look at that. I believe Stonington and Waterford are very much employee-driven because we have 28 officers. Waterford, for example, has 49.
Right.
So I think a lot of that is that, but it's also programs. It's programs that they offer. Waterford, for example, has the comfort service dog. We have an officer that's assigned fully to just doing that. They go out and do more public programs. So there's a cost involved with all of those things. But I think those 2 agencies are certainly driven by personnel. Old Saybrook, I challenge anybody to look through their 3 budgets and try to figure out where it goes. But again, that's not for me.
Right. And then you had some of the stats of 2022 compared to 2021. But on a general basis, what were the differences between 2021 and 2022? Kind of a global picture of increased presence.
I think we're just
activities.
experiencing more criminal activity. We're getting more crimes reported. We're having officers, and these are both proactive things officers are finding, but also many times things that are being reported to police. But one thing I think that's very important is much more complex investigations. Not the mailbox knocked down, but the cybercrime where somebody has $60,000 stolen and we need to follow up, do search. So there's a lot more to this. If you recall, in the news we had the unfortunate situation where we had the senior citizen in our community had the $60,000 scammed. We had a swatting incident from Pennsylvania where we had a 15-year-old that called and said that there was a shooting taking place and he was being victimized. And we did such a diligent job to get search warrants and really go around the country and find who did this. And the Board of Ed had money that was taken from several of their accounts through some fraud, and we found the person in the Bronx and one in California. So these aren't easy cases to solve, so they take much more effort, much more time to do that, which I think it factors into what the staff is able to do. And I think we've talked about this many times in the past, reactive versus proactive policing. I very much believe in proactive policing, getting police officers out there. I think all of you want to see that. You want to drive down the street and see a police car, see police officers doing active things. Unfortunately, the more investigations they have to do and go back to the police department, make phone calls or follow-ups, you don't see the cars out there. So what we try to do is find innovative ways that we can handle both of those things at the same time. So, we try to work through a lot of that stuff.
Right. And just a couple more questions. The 16,000 calls for service, you have 300-something arrests. What type of service is being called for?
That's everything. And I know if you want to go, if you go back every month in my police report to the police commission, I break down the summary of those calls for service. I don't have that in front of me right here. But it could be anything from suspicious person, suspicious vehicle, could be a larceny, could be a neighbor complaint. It could be somebody just needing police services for a problem or concern that they have. Could be up to an assault, could be a robbery, so I think, the best way to look at that is if you go back to the reports, you can see each month broken down for exactly what those are. We saw the arrests and they're kind of all over the place, but I will say one thing is, while we have more complex crimes happening, we're still extremely safe community. I think the crimes we're having are not tremendously violent crimes, and I think that's a testament to our citizens, our community, but also the police work that's being done. We have police officers that are out there visible, and they're taking action immediately when something is occurring. So I think that's a very important thing to making people feel safe, right? Because ultimately that's the goal of government, is the safety and protection of their citizens.
Right. So probably the vast majority of those calls don't require further policing action?
No. I mean, I think universally in policing, you probably find about 95% of those calls are things like that. And as we've talked about before, we certainly try to utilize outside resources as often as we can. We partner with DCF. We have a DCF worker that works out of the police department on a regular basis. She is instrumental in working with officers to help mitigate problems. The JRB that we have an officer on that works between Old Lyme, Lyme here, and Salem, certainly does a great job of mitigating some family problems that are happening. We work with social workers constantly. I think that's a very, very important piece where, we work with mobile outreach. We work with a lot of those agencies to, again, look at situations that are happening and try to find the best solution, because that solution isn't always sending a police officer out there. However, we find many times the social workers themselves are the ones who are calling the police department after they go out there, and we're more than happy to go out there and partner with them, because I think one thing that we have to remember in society, it isn't a one or the other, it should be a team approach. It's us working with those organizations and looking at each situation, and this is where the training is crucial, to know what resources are there, know the proper way to go through what we do, to say, this situation is going to be better handled by this individual from this agency. This one may not because of the different dynamics that may be there. I have a lot of social workers that I deal with on a constant basis. They don't want to be going to the houses by themselves in some of these situations. They want to have a police officer with them. And we're more than happy to stand back and let them do their thing. But what's our job? To keep everybody safe. And that means a social worker, as well. We don't want the tragedy that happened in London, 20 plus years ago to reoccur in our community because, that would just be horrific.
Right. And then just one last thing for me to get clarification. You have a sergeant and 2 patrol officers on duty with each shift, and the sergeant and the officers are both out covering their districts?
Yes, for the most part, but unfortunately, part of the job of police work involves paperwork. It involves processing of prisoners. It involves things that have to take place under the roof of the police department. We try to keep them out as often as possible. MDTs in the car allow for a lot of work to be done mobilely, but there are times they do have to go back into the building, especially the sergeant. If you have a prisoner in, for example, they have to do checks every 15 minutes physically of that person. So, certainly there are things that take people off of patrol. I will say that that minimum patrol, which is in the contract, is woefully low. And that's one of the things that we keep discussing as we talk about staffing. The more staffing we bring on, we're able to bump that up. And not necessarily where we replace people, but where we schedule people. So we can have more and more shifts that may have 4 officers scheduled. The minimum's 2. If somebody's sick, vacation, training, we may not replace them. But the shifts, normally, we can start to bump those up. And that's what we've started to do as we've added, officers.
Okay. Well, thank you and your department
Thank
for
you, Rich.
everything you do.
Thank you.
I would like to get a copy of your presentation.
Please, okay.
I thought that was very informative.
Okay.
Just, I guess, 2 quick questions. Do you think in some of those statistics on year over year, I'm curious, we didn't see, I don't think we saw 2020 in there, in 2019, if I'm remembering correctly, was it down in 2020 because everyone was
No,
home?
because I think if you
Or how
look
did
back
that-
on at least 2 of them, I showed you the increase from 20 to 21, but that's when we started to see the big increase. And I think everybody saw huge lulls in 20 because nobody was out. We weren't out proactively doing stuff. We weren't stopping cars. So the proactive arrests were almost non-existent because everybody in society was making contact with each other. We weren't really truly investigating things as deeply as we could because we weren't interacting. So that's why I went with the 20 to 21 increase and then the 21 to 22. Because I think it's important not to just look at the snapshot of 1 year. You need to look at what is the trend. And those trends over a 2-year period have been tremendous in our town. The impact it's had on our ability to do our job has certainly been significant, which I think is one of the biggest reasons why, the staffing is such a crucial piece to our agency.
Do you think there's an underlying cause across all the different arrests and investigations? Is it drugs at the root of everything?
I think
or-
it's a societal thing, but I think a lot of these cases are financially driven. I think a lot of these cases are scams, frauds, thefts, drugs in many cases. We don't necessarily have a lot of physical drug arrests, but the relation to a lot of them are drug-related in many, many, many cases, but also mental health. I think that factors into a lot of these too. I think there's been a decline in that across society in many, many places, which is why it's so crucial to partner with other agencies and work with, other opportunities to help, try to help people get resources, because it isn't just arresting somebody to help them; it's trying to find the root cause and find a solution to what's happening. So it's much more holistic than what policing used to be. It used to be you go in, you put the handcuffs on the bad guy or girl, you put them in jail, you send them to court, and you're done. Now there's a much more intertwined, holistic view of how we deal with things to try to really look at why is this happening, not just what happened.
And then my last question, I think last year, when we didn't have a full-time IT director, it seemed like you were spending a lot of time as, with IT. Are you finding now with Mr. Cleary's addition, is that freeing up some of
I think
department
the
time?
2 people standing right here are probably 2 of the most grateful, besides Joe Burgaw, in our town that Dan Cleary's here. Certainly, it's been a tremendous weight off of our shoulders. Star did a great job, but unfortunately, from our role, we had to facilitate so much, and now it feels like so much of that now is a quick phone call to Dan. to say, hey, take care, and he's taking care of it. Again, I think one of the best things that in my 6 years here in the town, that was probably one of the best things is getting that position filled, because it's been tremendous.
Great. Okay, so if you want to walk through the budgets,
Was there any more questions before I don't want to?
I have
Oops.
just one,
Yep.
just for the public, because I remember when the location of the police headquarters was being established, there was concern that there'd be difficulties with response time. And I don't think I've ever heard of anything, but I just want you to let the public know that that location has not had any negative.
I have not
effects.
received a single negative feedback from anybody in the community complaining about response time. Again, I think it, just from my own standpoint of sometimes being at the station when something happens and I leave, it's just as easy to get anywhere than it was from downtown. And sometimes it's harder downtown, especially in the summer, to get out of that Main Street location. But I don't think it's been in any impact to anything. And I think actually I've seen officers appear to be out on the road much more from this location than the downtown location. I think, I notice officers in the building much more downtown than I am now at this facility. So I think it's been a good thing.
Okay, thank
I think the structure, the design has certainly helped that.
Okay.
Just to touch on that, I think the traffic coming in our front door.
Go to the microphone, please.
So, yeah, just to touch on that, I think because one of the concerns also was, people having to go that far out to the edge of town, maybe there's going to be a decrease, but I can honestly say, working there during the day shift anyway, and, leaving halfway through part of evening shift, the traffic has picked up exponentially coming into that front door. Definitely seeing an increase compared to what we saw down here on Main Street. I mean, this was nice, but we would have people just randomly coming in, hey, do you have a bathroom we can use? Which is fine, yes, they could use the public bathroom that was in there, but there's been no decrease in, citizens coming in for services, whether, it's to deal with a complaint or just for something else that's not criminal. Our drug drop-off box, the RX prescription drug drop-off box, same thing. That's kept its same momentum going along with that. We have a thing coming up with the DEA take-back later on next month. So I just wanted to put that out there, that as you're bringing up the response time, that the traffic did not decrease coming in. If anything, I think it's picked up, and a lot of people are impressed with the facility as they walk into the doors.
Nice. Thank you.
And then I think, just as we go through them, very high level. I know Lauren McNamara couldn't be here tonight, but she had said she had just a question with the animal control officer. If we could just, go through that process again. I think it was last year, came in too late to be included, and so if you could just walk
Which
through
budget
that.
do you want to start with?
Do you want to just go down the numerically? So 2015.
Do dispatch for 15?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I would say 15, 16, 17, probably.
So inside of dispatch, there really is not a tremendous request for an increase. I think this past year, moving to the 8 full-time dispatchers has been a huge benefit. We have noticed a significant stabilization of the overtime and part-time. If all of you recall how many times that was the one thing that always had to be brought back to finance, was because something was off. We didn't have enough part-timers that were working, or there wasn't enough overtime, or there wasn't enough part-time lines. That stabilized this year, so I think we're in very, very good shape when it comes to that. So what we're asking for inside of dispatch is nothing other than the contractual raises that they've been asked for, or that the union has been provided. And we actually, there was a reduction in overtime by the Board of Selectmen. By what? Okay, the first selectman, $5,000, but again, everything else is just the contractual raises, and you'll see zeros on the rest. I think moving into the new facility, all of the equipment being brand new has been a tremendous benefit. So now it helps you stabilize some of the costs inside of there, as well as sharing building costs, material costs, because a lot of things are now coming out of the police department, so we don't have to raise it inside of the dispatch lines. So, any questions on that?
No? Okay. I think we're good there. And- Yes, so do you want to go right to 216, keep us from
Okay.
flipping all over from here.
So on the police department budget, if you recall the conversation 2 years ago, the Board of Police Commissioners came up with a staffing study looking at comparatives around the state, looking at the state averages and statistics of a number we should be at. And that number still was nowhere near the numbers I showed you from Waterford and Stonington, because we realized unrealistic financially for our town to really get to that, because what it would take to jump to those numbers. But certainly looking at some sort of attrition to get us to a spot we needed to be. We've added one this past year. We currently have 2 people in the academy, one of which is replacing a sergeant that just retired this past, or 2 weeks ago. So we're trying to maintain that staffing. We do have some retirements coming up very, very soon, so there will be some more transition inside of our department. But this staffing study had asked for 2 officers. We put in for 3. The first selectman cut that back to 2, and that's what was presented from the Board of Selectmen. Was to bring those both on in November, because that is when the next regional academy will be starting. So it's really useless with 2 officers, if you're going to go to the academy, to start them financially in July when you know we're not going to be able to hire them or start them at the academy until November. So that certainly, to me, was a no-brainer to have that cut happen, allowing us hopefully to still bring 2 people on, but bring them on when the academy starts in November and maintain them after that. I do believe we're going to start to see more and more flux with people leaving and coming in our department. So, you know, we have a lot of people that are at that part where they can retire. But then we have a huge gap in the middle of our department where it's going to be years and years until other people can retire. So we're going to have a spate of them for a while, and then you're going to have a lull, and then, you know, unfortunately go back to a spate, but we'll all be long gone by the time that happens. So again,
Just retired, I hope.
oh yeah, I meant from work. I meant, yeah, sorry. We won't be sitting in this room. We'll be relaxing, relaxing, watching Murder, She Wrote or something, right?
So
yes, sir.
on that line, is that the explanation why you can have 2 additional officers, but just a 1.25% increase?
Well, I think it's a couple things. It's also because of the gap, because when somebody retires at a top step or a sergeant, and you're replacing them with a patrolman at a much, much lower rate, is significant savings takes place there. But also adding 2 people, but starting them in November of the year at step 1, there's certainly a cost savings involved in that.
And then just a clarification, the increases here, there's no increase, no contractual increase in that line. I'm carrying it in salary contingency, the unions and negotiations. So that 1.25% is for the 2 new officers, right? That's not, there's no contractual obligations there. So later we could talk, I can break down the salary contingency, but we've assigned a, you know, percentage for these officers in salary contingency.
Okay.
So that's why, nice catch, it's only $30,000 increase. So.
Okay.
So going down in the, excuse me, contractual for the admin assistant clerical, when we get down to the foot patrol, was the comment that I had about Main Street, about trying to get more officers on overtime onto the Main Street beat. So that 30,000 plus line is, or excuse me, 32,000 is for that overtime. So the beach communities, not the ones that hire us, but actually we have a beach patrol that jumps between the communities in the summer, as well as a Main Street patrol. And we sporadically try to put those out there to beef up the numbers and patrol people. So, Pete, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, you look like
I
you're.
answered it.
Okay. Overtime, we had asked again, based on actuals. We looked at that and put a request in based on what we again thought we were going to be at. As we all probably have seen, this year has been an anomaly where we are significantly trending higher in overtime. But we had a significant part of our summer into the fall where we had 5 officers out at the same time through different injuries and surgeries and illnesses. So that certainly takes a toll when you have to replace those officers on a pretty daily basis. That overtime racks up pretty quickly. So those are the unfortunate things that are unavoidable anomalies in public safety. Also, the training. As I said, that goes for the new officers. That goes for things such as the taser, firearms, body cameras, all things that are required for each officer, as well as the academy tuition, which will come up actually in a minute. Boat storage and maintenance, again, we already hit on that. And again, everything that's listed here as an increase was already discussed on that slide, so I don't want to, I don't want to, belabor it and give you too much. But John,
You said you're having somebody retire shortly.
yeah, well, proposed, yes.
Moving forward, is there anybody else retiring in the near future?
There are, so I think there's several people that have the capability of retiring. We've only had 2 people actually discuss the possibility of retiring within the next year. I think 2 other people who are eligible don't plan to do it, quite yet. But the problem is in this business is it's a balancing game for us administratively, because if somebody comes into me tomorrow and says, I'm going to retire, it puts you in a hole as a department, because now that individual has to be replaced, but we may not be able to replace that person for quite a while if we can't find a lateral transfer that's already certified that's somebody we want to bring on board, and we have to send somebody to the academy, but we can't get an academy seat for a year. And then once they go to the academy, they're not good to us for a year because they have to go through training and can't be on their own. So, that's always a difficult task for us administratively, to balance those retirements and try to, keep a good barometer. We try to have good conversations with everybody to really feel what they're thinking about doing, and we've been lucky so far. But, anybody could come out of the blue and say that I'm done, and, we'd have
What
to
I'm getting at
be a
is,
deficit.
have one officer retire, say, by the end of the year, theoretically speaking, and then you have somebody retire right after the first quarter, whatever. So you're down 2. So now you're down to 26 officers. So if you don't get 2 more this year, that'll just maintain your 28.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
29 to 30, depending.
And that's always, with additions to department and looking at those numbers, that's part of what we look at, because we also have to plan for those deficits. And it's difficult to plan specifically, but also to say, if we jump up a little bit for a short time, that may not maintain at that level, because we may have a time that it has a deficit because of retirements, which ultimately, to put it to dollars and cents for the finance people, it's a savings, because now you have salary that's not being expended because we haven't hired somebody to replace them, because we don't have an academy class to send them to. So it is something that there is a savings sometimes, even though you've added people to the department.
Okay, and how much of a chance is it to get somebody from another department?
It's always a good chance. I think we are one of the departments that are an attractive destination. We have done extremely well in the 6 years I've been here in getting laterals from all over. So I think it's a very, very good chance often, but we are very specific with the laterals that we take. We don't bring laterals just to bring laterals. We have a very specific desire for what our department is, and that's to maintain the highest level of professionalism that we do right now. We are very specific in looking for people that fit into our mission. If we don't find them, we're not going to hire a lateral just for finances. We're going to, wait for somebody that is, new and find the right person for that even. So,
Okay.
but again, I think there's opportunities. We've done very well, and knock on wood, we continue to do well with that.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Rich?
Yes, for the training for the firearms and the taser, where does that occur? Does that occur at the academy, or?
No, that's locally. We have trainers for all of those, including other less lethal. The firearms training is a yearly mandate. The taser is a yearly mandate. So we have instructors in our own department that take care of that.
Oh, okay.
Everybody set there? Okay. I guess then to
Gives us animal control.
26. Yep.
Okay. Animal control, the biggest change that took place inside of animal control was a shift from having a full-time and part-time to having 2 full-times. That has operationally worked out tremendously so far. It has balanced the schedule much better. It has kept a part-time employee who is extremely valuable on our force, or on the force for both towns. And one of the unique things about this is the individual that worked for the town of East Lyme, or both individuals, really work in two towns. So while they are our charge and our responsibility, they work a large part of their day in Waterford and under the Waterford Police Department as well. So it's always a balancing act for us to do those things. But, statistically, when you look at, the number of animals processed in calls, in Waterford in 2022, they had 843 calls for service, East Lyme 379 for a total of 1222. So you see number-wise, tremendously more taking place in Waterford than in East Lyme. So we certainly recognize that. So there's a lot going in, a lot of money coming in donations, 2,300 from Waterford and 3,900 from East Lyme. So, a lot of what the animal control officers do is generating that public relations, generating donations from people that help offset a lot of the budget items. And also remembering that Waterford reimburses us for parts of our expenditures too. So, certainly there's a revenue side to this part of the budget that doesn't exist necessarily in the other budgets that we have. Did you know what her question was?
To just walk through how we got to that increase to the,
Okay, so what it was recognized was there was a deficit because you had a part-time employee making, extremely low part-time wages who was responsible for every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, weekends. It was just very unmanageable to do those things and ask somebody on a part-time basis to do that every single day. And oh, by the way, you're on call every night. So this was the most effective way. If you look at the number of calls for service, the responsibility of the two towns, having 1.5 was woefully inadequate, especially when you compare it to other towns and populations that don't, have more people for far less work. Again, it's worked out tremendously to do this. I think it's more cost effective, even if it may cost dollar-wise a little bit more. You're not paying the overtime, you're not having the call time, and you're maintaining professional employees rather than having, part-time employees that may have to leave because they're not being paid enough and need to seek other employment. So I think, it's a win-win for our department.
yeah, to the extent we can get economies of scale with our neighbors makes sense.
Yeah.
To what extent is it 50/50 for expenses
Yes.
as well as salaries?
Yep.
No?
Well, some.
Everything except overtime, right? No.
Well, so if the overtime is actual, so if the ACO works overtime in Waterford, Waterford is billed for those hours if they work at East Lyme. So it's not a 50/50 split, it's actual cost.
Okay.
So they get more in Waterford because there's more calls in Waterford.
Okay. And for the facilities and those expenses, is that?
So the facilities, we share New London's facility now. So it used to be when this original agreement was undertaken, Waterford had its own facility. So they took care of the facility, we took care of the personnel. Now we're in New London, so Waterford doesn't have that cost, so there's a split on the other pieces of it. So we really aren't paying anything for facility at all. Yes, Paul.
Just had one question, just going back onto the police side for a
Yep,
second.
okay.
It's just general, for the next 4 years for the construction that's going on up at 74, is that, what impact is that going to have?
Tremendous.
Are your team going to be in charge of doing will they be doing the private duty?
I don't know if you saw my quote the other day where I said it's going to be fun. I'm not sure that was the exact word I used to start with F, but it's going to be challenging. We've had multiple meetings with the contractor. The engineering firm the state has hired. This is the largest project the Eastern District has done in most of their memories. It's going to be just tremendous amount of work to take place. We are working with the state police, Waterford, Montville, to have discussions about staffing because it's going to be something, even the state police with their part of the work are concerned. They're not going to have the staffing to maintain it
Yeah,
consistently.
you burn your guys out.
Right. So, it's going to be a balancing act. Luckily, a lot of the work is at night, which will reduce the need for more and more officers. Even though you still need police there, it's going to be less because of the nighttime work versus the daytime traffic work. There's significant limitations on when they can work, which have been worked out over time with the town, the Board of Ed, and DOT. So a lot of thought has gone into this, but until we hit the ground running with this, it's certainly going to be a concern of ours, because remember what Costco was and what that job was, and the guy who was in DOT in charge for Costco is now at this consulting firm in charge, and he says that, Costco was barely dipping your toe in the water of what this is going to be. So.
Imagine, yeah. How about patrol? You'll be able to get around the best you can, or?
Yeah, the good thing is there's going to be limited closures of 161. Sometimes there'll be one lane. I think there's very limited times that it's going to be completely closed, and most of that is for when they actually take down the bridge structure. It'll be 48-hour periods of time that they do that closure. So, we will be aware. We'll have to plan. The good thing is this is a smart work zone site, so there will be an app that everybody can get on their phone. You can bring it up, see live camera, so you say, I'm not doing that today, or it's good today. But it's important, too, because dispatch can do that same thing. They can have it up in the TV and dispatch and tell officers, all right, you don't want to go through this area because of traffic, or, we're going to try to work a lot of these technological areas to make it less impactful for what we're doing. And the fire departments are going to have fun as well.
Yeah, Friday nights in the summertime are going to be challenging.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great, well, I think that's everyone's questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, very welcome. Thank you. Any other questions after this, please let me know. Thanks.
And will you be emailing or?
Do you have it, Kevin?
I'm just asking for it, and also the recording secretary, you just send it to us.
Yep, I will send it to you. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much.
I did.
Okay.
Okay.
It sounds like
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is the Niantic Fire Department. We have 217, Chief McDonald.
Okay. One of the things that we've discovered, it's no longer a small-time fire department. From July 1st until Monday night about 9 o'clock, both Niantic and Flanders Fire Departments responded to 2,342 calls. And we still got to go till July for our final numbers. So we're getting busy. So, in saying that, if anybody knows anybody that wants to be an EMT or a firefighter, please send them to us. We'll put them to work. We'll educate them, put them to work. So we can use it. The budget that I have tonight is pretty much straightforward. It's took a couple of cuts. The only thing we added on was money for training. Firefighter 1 course went from about $800 to $1,250, and Firefighter 2, I'm told, is $900 and some change. So these courses are going up. In order to get a fireman certified, they have to have at least the Firefighter 1 course, and we prefer Firefighter 2. Phones are the same, uniforms are the same, most of it's contractual, miscellaneous supplies the same. Vehicle maintenance was cut down a little bit. OSHA remained cut down 1,000. Building maintenance is the same. God bless you. So, we didn't do too bad here. We had a few cuts, but it's nothing insurmountable.
So,
If I could, under vehicle maintenance, where it was cut is, a couple of years ago, remember they had that extremely expensive repair to one of the fire trucks. It was about $23,000, $25,000. And here again, I reduced it to $28,500 because that's more in line with what they normally would expend. And something like a catastrophic failure like that would be, obviously, that's what we have a contingency for, so that's why I reduced that a little bit.
My just question for clarity, under 611 firefighters, the discussion is, it reflects the salary of 5 full-time firefighters, 40 hours a week. And then it says 1 of 5 firefighters' salary is paid by EL ambulance. So is the one that's being paid by the ambulance, is that dollar amount in here? Or it's somewhere under revenue? And then,
At the very bottom,
yeah,
in the revenue section of the financing sources, it's a EL subsidy. That's inclusive of.
I just, it wasn't on
Yeah,
the
it's not-
page.
it wasn't on our page.
It wasn't on our
Code
page,
number.
so that's
But
why
then
I
there's one for
wasn't.
Flanders and one for Niantic.
So I can,
I
do you
just
want me
wanted
to just
to
go
be
through that real
sure.
quick?
Yeah.
Just show you? Okay, so, you're right, I see that here, okay? The IT portion. So this is, there's an IT portion of it, we're proposing a 10% increase to $44,000. And then, I don't know if I have it here.
No, that was IT.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't copy that work paper over. I
You know
have it
what?
on this laptop. We could go over it later.
Yeah, I believe you, I just, because it wasn't on here, I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was looking at here.
It's the second page of the revenue subsidy, or the revenues, very bottom there. It says ELL, it's like 211, I think, 211,000. That's inclusive of the firefighter's salary and the IT portion.
John, the calls, I'm just assuming it's what, you figure about 75-25 between ambulance calls and fire?
The total EMS calls is 1787, and this is for both departments, both Niantic and Flanders. And the total fire calls is 555.
And then so the ambulance is covering one firefighter for each department. Is there any other revenue from the ambulance that covers?
Yeah, the ambulance, first of all, the ambulance covers all our fuel.
Okay.
All the diesel fuel for the trucks and cars and whatever we have, propane, all that stuff. The other thing is, they buy all sorts of equipment. They allocate funds for rescue equipment in the budget. They also allocate funds for turnout gear. What else? Pardon me? EMT classes, the ambulance fund pays for.
Okay.
You know, the ambulances, new ambulances, well over $250,000 now. What was that? Oh, yeah. We bought an ambulance from Waterford when we had our catastrophic failure. When we lost a motor in Niantic's ambulance, and Flanders' ambulance was in an accident, so our two main ambulances were out of service at the same time. We bought an ambulance from Waterford. We spent $15,000 for the ambulance. The stretcher assembly was $63,000. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've just been trying to, I mean, over the past few years, as you know, I've been trying to get my arms around the whole thing because there's, it's like 5 different organizations here that are doing this one service between the 2 fire departments, the town, and East Lyme Ambulance, and it just seems everything's coming from all different places, and it'd be nice to get a clear picture as to what medical response is costing the town. Because I know the revenue side only goes to East Lyme Ambulance, and the town is getting some pieces for that. But we really don't know each year what, we talk about this, we talk about that, but we never get a report showing what the ambulance provided to the town. I think that would be something good moving forward.
I think, my opinion, I did request or have a meeting with the Ambulance Association president, rather than, because that'd be the best person to speak to regarding that.
Okay. That's what makes it, because town's paying a lot of money for to provide ambulance service, because most of the personnel, that's what they're doing.
But here again, the cost that would fall on the town without their support would be tremendous too.
Right, I
So
understand.
it's not, it's hard to say that, you know.
I'm just trying
Like
to-
I said, it's better to have that conversation with them present than not.
Kevin, I can speak for real quick. Just as a synopsis real quick, we put about
If you
$600,000,
could speak closer to the microphone.
we put about
please.
$600,000 a year back into the town.
Okay.
Plus, we're also putting 2 people on during the evening shift, and on weekends, we're putting ambulance crews on all weekend, not including that money. So this year, we're buying an ambulance for $300,000. We bought another ambulance for $100,000 this year. We bought a brand-new pickup truck for Station 2 for $100,000. So the money that we're putting back into the service far outsees what the town is putting to EMS supplies.
And I think
Yeah.
everyone is appreciative, but as finance people, we're trying to put the pieces together. And so I do think it would be a great idea to just have a meeting with the ambulance president, just to
Yeah,
help
well-
us get that holistic.
Sure. So what happens is the ambulance president and the 2 fire chiefs are the ones that run that. So we're
Yeah.
part of the administration of that. So we
Right.
deal with it falls under us. So it's the fire department, and the ambulance is a subcommittee within the fire department. So that's how it falls underneath. So, like I said, when we got our rescue truck, it was almost $800,000. The fire department paid $600,000. So when these shortfalls come up, we're the ones that are picking up the extras. You know, we needed town fuel, we've kicked in for it and paid our portion, so we try to make sure that we give back more than we take.
We just want to make sure we know that too. You guys are
Yeah.
getting the credit for that.
Yeah, so it's,
We don't see that in our budget, so we want to.
yeah, because it's a separate organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I just had, on the capital, it was $20,000 for the engine that's coming. We expect that to come up by the end of the year?
The last delivery date I heard was November. The $20,000, what happened when they purchased the engine, they had a dollar figure of what it would cost, and then they went down, they sat down and developed the engine. Okay? When it come up to time to purchase, they had to do it quick because there was a 15% increase coming up. Okay, so they bought the engine, and by doing that, they had to eliminate some equipment. One of the pieces of equipment was about $15,000 to $20,000 for a generator. So the new engine's coming without a generator. Well, all the tools that we have, the saws and stuff, are electric. And when we have a generator, we bring our own power to the scene. Well, with this engine, we can't. So what's happening is we have to go to battery-operated equipment, which is about $5,000 for saws and stuff like that. And there's a fan we want to get for about $5,000. And the other thing that wasn't put into the purchase of the truck was people going out to the factory and inspecting it to see that we're getting exactly what the contract says we're going to get. Okay, so that's the remaining money into that $20,000. And we don't know what flights are going to be. We don't know. And I've cut it back from, we used to send 3 people out there to 2 people. Okay, we'll go out and look at the engine. An example of one of the prime things what happened quite a few years ago when Chief Pringle was chief, we bought a fire engine, and he went out to the factory with a couple other people, and they looked at our brand new fire engine, and it was painted 2 different colors. There was 2 shades of red on it. The people that supplied the chassis had 1 shade, and the people that supplied the box had another shade. So the manufacturer wasn't very happy when he had to repaint a complete fire truck. So these are some of the things that happen. They go out and they go out on a pre-paint adventure, and they look at the truck, because this is the time they can make any changes that they have to. Anything that's left out of the contract, they can get that put into the truck at that time. You know, without cost
I understand
overruns
the
and
user,
everything
but-
else.
So that's, I mean, a truck I've been involved in. That's always been involved in the purchase cost. It wasn't in the purchase cost this time?
No.
Okay.
No. A lot of things were taken out to get that truck at that price. So. Now, unfortunately, we have to add some dollars to get the equipment that we need.
Thank you.
John, how many ambulances does the town have, or do you have?
Right now, we have 4.
And they're all able to go on the road?
3 out of the 4 are. The fourth one, it's up in Flanders. We're waiting for the stretcher to come in.
Yep.
And it's been added to our license. So once the stretcher comes in, we can get the final inspection by the state, and then it'll be ready to go.
What's the normal response time? If somebody calls 911 and is having a heart attack?
We usually get there within 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay, and all 3 ambulances are ready to go 24/7?
Yes. There's 2 ambulances that are frontline ambulances.
Yep.
And then we'll end up with 2 spares. We have 1 spare ambulance now. So if one goes out for maintenance, a spare ambulance
So
goes
that's 1 out
in
of 4.
service. Pardon me?
That's 1 out of the 4, the
Yeah.
spare?
Yep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And there's different types of, like advanced life support and basic? Is
Right.
there?
We are basic life support for the EMTs. We work with the paramedics from Lawrence Memorial, and that's the advanced life support. So if we have a call for somebody having a heart attack, we can go out, give the person oxygen. We could, hopefully don't have to revive them, but we have tools to do that. And then bring the person to the ambulance, and then we start transport to the hospital, and that's when you'll see an ambulance pulled over on the side of the road and a paramedic unit behind it. We picked up the paramedic, and he's the one that can administer the drugs and all that stuff. So we don't delay transport. We meet up with them somewhere along the way.
Got it. Any other questions? Nope.
I just
Okay.
wanted a question on the firefighters 1 and 2. The state providing any more increase in the classes? I know it was hard to get some, if you had somebody, it was hard to get them enrolled in a class. Are they getting easier?
Yeah, it's getting a little bit easier to get into those classes. Some of the other ones, like pump operator and aerial operator, the instructor classes and the officer classes are getting harder to get into. But yeah, you got to jump on it quick when you see it in the
EMT as
calendar.
well, because I know what does it take, 6 months now at least, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
EMT is a whole nother ball of wax. It's a 6-month course, and you hope you got an EMT when they come out of it. It's a 75% pass rate. Is that what it is now?
It's like probably 25% of girls that don't pass.
And yeah, so it has a very high fail rate. It does, and
They're teaching to a standard that they don't know how to test yet.
and the instructors can use 1 of 7 books.
Yeah. There's we're nationally recognized now, so the problem is our instructors didn't know what to teach. So for the first 3 years you were taking a class, they didn't know what they were teaching. There's no test for it, so they didn't know what to teach. So the failure rate was pushing young kids that wanted to become an EMT away from the service. You know, they spend $1,200 for a class, and at the end of it, there's nothing to show for it. You know, we're lucky that we are getting some younger kids now. It's 6 college credits now. It used to be 3, but it's still very, very hard to get. I mean, if you get if you get an EMT and you're in, we have 2 in high school now, 3. It's kudos to them because it's a challenge.
Thank you. So are we all set with Niantic Fire and so
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Chris Taylor? Or
Good evening, I'm Chris Taylor, I'm the fire chief of Flanders Firehouse. John got most of the questions out of the way. But our budget's pretty easy. Over the last 7 years, this will be year number 8, we haven't had an increase at all. The only thing we had an increase on was statistically was our firefighters line item and part-timers. One of the things we've done, like I said before, for over 8 years, we kept all our maintenance, all our vehicle maintenance, radio maintenance, building maintenance, all the equipment line items the same. This year we have, I think it's a 3.15% increase overall, including salaries. We had to go a little bit, I just held a aerial operator class at Flanders. We had 9 members in town take it, and it was $500. You know, we have a training budget of $5,000, so that basically wiped out our whole training budget. I'm also doing an instructor class coming up next month, and I'm doing an EMT class this month. So our training budget gets wiped out pretty fast. It's good because we're getting a lot of guys now want to take classes again. It's kind of like a new regime. It's tough because to be a volunteer, it's very hard. I mean, it takes over a year and a half to become an EMT, Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2 member now. Fuels, there again, we pay for through the ambulance committee is gracious enough to give us that. We also pay for the 2 lowest firefighters. So whatever the 2 lowest firefighters, doesn't matter if they're in Nyack or Flanders, the 2 lowest guys get paid for by the ambulance committee. I think that contract ends next year.
We have to read.
I know it goes on. We know we have to renegotiate the, it used to be the overnight firefighter was the one we paid for, but here again, now that we have more senior people that prefer to work that shift, now it's going to be the 2 junior firefighters too. And here again, too, one of the things the ambulance, because one of the firefighters being paid by that was called to active duty, so technically the person they were paying for was gone, and they offered to still continue to pay that amount of money, even though it was now being funded through to whoever would have to pick up the shift due to that. So, yeah, we're renegotiating with that. And we've even talked about, we do need more firefighters, and they've even talked about possibly entering to more firefighters being paid for salary for the, from the Ambulance Association. But that's just under discussion now, or not even negotiation, just under discussion. We would still pick up the benefits, but they would pick up the salary. So that's under discussion, not only to keep the 2, but expand that a little bit.
Okay.
So one of the hardest things for John and I, anytime there's a fire, fire apparatus, if I buy a ladder, it's always double or triple the price. We just can't go to True Value and buy a ladder. We got to buy a ladder from Shipmans. And our fire gear this year, it's a pair of pants and a coat, $4,000. I just got the quote the other day. Just for coat and pants. That's not boots, that's not helmet, that's not gloves, that's not a hood. Our full.
There's nowhere else you can buy other than Shipmans?
Shipmans has they have 2 different sets of gear we can buy, and they're the ones that hold it in all of New England. So if I buy it from Pennsylvania, I still have to go through Shipmans because they have the territory. So it's almost like state bid, but
Yeah.
what's that? Sole source. Yeah, sole source provider. It's like our Scott packs. When we buy them, we have to buy them through Shipmans because they have the right in Connecticut to buy them. That's what we use, and they have the right to it. So but that's the standard price. I mean, when I first got my first set of fire gear, it was $400. A fire helmet I ordered last year, one of them just came in at 3 of them. If I order a set of fire gear today, it takes over a year to get, because the way they make them. So it's just like the police academy. If we hire a new firefighter, each firefighter gets 2 sets of gears, a radio. The Board of Finance, the town budgets for that. We make that up within the firehouse. So the ambulance committee will kick in, buy them a set of gear. We try to reallocate another radio for them. When a new fireman gets hired versus a police officer, they come with a full set of fire gear, uniforms and everything. We work with the town to manage what we can. So there's a big difference on how a full-time fireman and a full-time police officer are in this town. It's a big difference. Like I said, we try our best to keep our costs down. Last year and this year, I had a brand new, our ladder truck's almost 6 years old. The computer system died in it. So the ladder system went down, then the computer system for the pump died. Unfortunately, all these engines now are computer driven, and you have water. So 2 things that don't mix. So one nice thing I've been working with Kevin once a week. He's been amazing to work with. It's a great asset to the town, and we've been good friends. Unfortunately, by this ladder truck, but realistically, there's not much of an increase in our budget. Like I said, 3%. I think the paid firemen at 2.32%. So.
Well, we definitely appreciate everything that the fire departments and, I'm sorry, the police chief has left, but you know, public safety is one of the most important things that goes on in town, so we appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Everybody else is set with this?
And Paul, you would realize this too. Now, if you want to be a volunteer fireman, and Chris and John, you can attest, when they started, you'd show up, here's your gear, you know, you get a pager, show up, and you'll learn. Now you can't do any of that until you've been trained, and, you know, so many people don't have the time to devote to the training, which is why we've seen, I think, a drop in volunteers, the requirements to maintain your certification and so forth like that. So, yeah, obviously, if you have someone, an EMT coming to your house or a fireman, you want to be sure they are extremely qualified for your protection. You want their safety too. So, you know, they're better trained now, no question about that. I personally have had a couple times in the past couple of years had a call because I wanted to see what happens if you run a lawnmower over a beehive, and I found out.
Pull your car out in front of people.
And I do react to bee stings. So, but anyway, and here again that night, the neighbor across the street said they saw it happen. They said they couldn't believe how fast they got there.
One thing you talked about the classes. I mean, the classes are more available. Hard thing is they're more at the schools. They're more at like, I've had a lot of guys go to East Haddam Firehouse.
Yeah.
Every guy I've sent there has come back and they've passed. You know, for me, I've had 5 people go through there, and everybody comes back with a passing grade. We try to do everything we can. You know, if we help them out with gas, they take the chief's card just to save a little bit. Because unfortunately, when the gas prices are $4 or $5, you know, it's hard for some of these families to justify. I mean, it's either buying dinner or buying gas for their car. So if we can do anything within the firehouses, I know John and I have gotten together, and Chief Barone and I got together before that, and I know that we've had a fire study. We've had all that stuff that says, you know, the 2 firehouses didn't intermingle, and Paul can contest that. We train together now. We call each other. I talk to John more than my kids half the time, probably, but we're 2 separate firehouses, but we're the town of East Lyme. And we're trying to act together.
Glad to hear that.
Chris, how is that substation out by Rocky Neck utilized?
Station 2?
Yeah.
Right now, there's 1 full-timer during the day. There's one person in the evening, Monday through Friday. Unfortunately, but that's probably the busiest firehouse in town. Between Crescent Point, AHEPA, you know, we're building all these facilities in town, and we're getting a lot more senior living. But the problem is our ambulances and the fire trucks are going crazy with them.
Yeah, so those 3 ambulances
Yeah.
that I talked about, is there one in each of the stations?
Right now, there's 2. Is there 1 on Station 2? No. 2 in headquarters. There's 2 in headquarters, and then there's going to be 2 at Flanders. So really, if the first ambulance goes out, and there's another crew, they can take it, or we can request another ambulance within town.
But there's not one station.
No, because we have more personnel at headquarters, so more personnel are there.
Headquarters being
on Grand Street.
Grand
Yeah,
Street.
Grand Street.
Okay.
Yeah,
And one nice thing too is by us putting on the ambulance committee's paying for EMTs.
Yeah.
So if I have an EMT at Flanders, they automatically go for calls in Nyack and they don't have an extra EMT. So we're having a pickup truck chase the ambulance around, so to speak, in a way.
John, we're also looking at coming up with an MOU to better utilize the full-timers day and night now, because
Yeah.
we've got some, I don't say we are nowhere near enough, but we have more now.
Better
So
plan.
we can address maybe reassessing our stationing them around to, and we want to try and have as often as possible 2 people at every fire station, because that just makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know,
So
hard
we're
thing
looking
for
at
us,
doing that.
like when we had an ambulance down, we had borrowed Monfils ambulance, their spare ambulance. Everyone's like, oh my God, Monfils been in town
No, that's
for months. But actually, we were using their ambulance because we just can't go pick an ambulance up and someone's spare ambulance has to be licensed, it has to be ready to go. I mean, you really have, you know, a stretcher $63,000. You know, to buy defibrillators $1,000. You know, all that stuff adds up really quick.
Imagine that substation down by Rocky Neck gets really busy in the summertime.
Yeah, we could shift stuff around internally too. I mean,
Yeah.
if we know there's some kind of event going out there, we'll move stuff out there.
Yeah.
If NIDA can't get EMTs, we'll send Flanders EMTs down there. So I've been really grateful about talking to each other and trying to take down some of the barriers.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Everyone all set? Thank you very much. Next, we have Fire Marshal. So this is 224, and I should apologize for having you on last year.
That's all right, you put the new guy on first, put the new guy on last, that's okay. It's all right.
That was a...
We'll good evening. My name is Bill Bundy, and this is my first time before you folks, so I just want to introduce myself. Took over in May of last year, which I think is kind of important to tell you that, because it'll tell you, I'd like to start by telling you where I walked into and what I encountered, and where we are currently. When I came in to the office in May, I was the fire marshal. There was no other staff. There was, prior to that, there was a full-time marshal and a part-time deputy, and for whatever reasons, they decided to move on. Over the course of time, currently, there's still myself, full-time marshal. We have a part-time deputy, and then we have 2 part-time inspectors, if you would. They basically, like, they came out last year for East Lyme Day. They help out with fireworks, but by and large, there's really just 1 part-time deputy marshal. We also added a part-time administrative assistant. Going back, while I was preparing for this, going back to currently the proposed budget is $224,246. In researching this, going back to 2018, the makeup of the office at that point was a full-time marshal, a full-time deputy, and a full-time admin. And their budget was about $250,000. So over the course of the next several years, budget cuts and whatnot, our office got trimmed back. Some of the duties that were assigned to those that were part of the office were doled out, but the bread and butter of the office responsibilities, the fire investigations, the fire inspections, the plan reviews, the fire safety and life safety, those remain the same. And those are required by statute. So having said that, last year's budget, we had a part-time marshal budget, and I think it was about $65,000. There was no admin position that was allocated. So when I came in May, because we had at that time no part-time fire marshals, I approached finance, and I felt that there was a need to have at least somebody in the office that could field the phone calls and help with scheduling of inspections so that I could be out. Otherwise, basically, it's a one-man show. So we moved, I think it was $35,000 from that, and created a subsection, if you would, to pay for and hire an administrative assistant, which we did. This year's budget, what I did was create a separate line item for that administrative assistant. And that shows it's about $34,000. It's about $23 an hour. And that's based on a 24 to 28 hour work schedule. Trying to get coverage Monday through Friday, 9 to 3, and with the option of maybe grabbing a couple hours on a Friday. Going back to 2018, the full-time administrative assistant back then was $48,000. So we're still coming in considerably less than what we were paying for a full-time and hourly based on a 50-week yearly work cycle, 40 hours a week. It was about $22.50. So we haven't even exceeded that. Some of those statutory responsibilities that remain, fire inspections. Our office is required by statute to go out and do annual inspections in most cases, biannual inspections, and in some cases they're 3-year inspections on commercial properties, residential properties, different assemblies that are situated throughout the community. Currently, we have between 800 and 900 properties in town that are required by statute to be inspected. In January of this year alone, there were about 50 that should have been a recurring inspection that were due. Most of these were last inspected in 2018. What we're finding ourselves doing right now is that we are inspecting properties that need to be inspected on their end. People who need daycare licenses renewed by the state, liquor licenses renewed by the state. So they're initiating contact with us. So by virtue of having this administrative assistant, we have now hopefully going to have the ability to start helping with scheduling some of these, which is now going to segue into the creation of a full-time deputy marshal. I've asked for a full-time deputy fire marshal for $75,000, a full-time work week, 37 and a half hours, because I can't do it alone. And this goes back to what you had back in 2018. Now, understanding that when you look at the budget, there's a significant percent of increase in my budget. I think it's over 20%. Understanding that, I also recognized when I came in that East Lyme, the town of East Lyme, is one of the few communities in the area that doesn't exercise its right to charge for fire marshal services. By statute, the same statute that requires us to do these inspections also gives us the ability to charge for those services. So what I've done is I drafted a proposed ordinance that mirrors what the state fire marshal has recommended in terms for language, and it pretty much mirrors the 10 municipalities around us in terms of what they charge. Now, if this is, and I met with, and I didn't meet, I actually spoke with the town attorney, was today, Wednesday, Monday, and we discussed some of the language, and it's my understanding that it's going before the Board of Selectmen next week for action, perhaps. And if this were to pass, based on the inspections that we have and the pre-plans that we need to do, we're looking at an estimated revenue of conservatively of about $75,000 annually. Kind of washes my deputy marshal. I tried to do that because, again, I know you can't build it all back in 1 year, but we are going to find ourselves in a very precarious situation if we don't start catching up to these inspections that are long overdue. We're doing the ones that people are calling us. We're not getting into the places we need to. So those are the big items, and I think any questions on those right there, because I know those are the big number items.
Just to clarify, you said all the other towns charge?
I did a little straw poll. New London, Moffat, Willimantic, Mystic, Old Mystic, Paquonic Bridge, Old Saybrook, and Waterford currently has their proposal that they're proposing, but those towns right now currently have those. And it's the same language, same exact language. And it's all based, the fee structure is based on, like if somebody were to come in, like we have some new development coming in. I've just received some plans for plan review. When they do their building application, when their permit application, the building department charges for plan review. And there's a section in there to include fire marshal review for fire suppression, all the things associated with that. Well, we don't get anything for that. But by statute, we have the ability to collect 65% of what the building department charges. A lot of people think it's a one and done, and I'll give you, for instance, like 185 Main Street was a pretty big project with the luxury apartments and all the commercial properties down below. Well, we do the plan review on that. The building department does theirs, we do ours, but we have mixed assemblies. We have residential, we have commercial, we have a lot of things to look at. So we will sign off and give them the initial okay to start whatever phase of it, and a lot of it is done in phases. But after we do the plan, the plan review, we're still going out there to ensure that the developer's still doing what they said they were going to do, the contractors are doing, and in a lot of cases, they'll encounter an issue that may cost them some money, so now they're asking us, we want to do a modification. So our plan review doesn't stop once we've signed off on the initial plan. So we're still doing the same volume of follow-up that the building department's doing without compensation for that. So this gives us the ability to do that. Does that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wanted, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's a relatively simple, budget in terms of line items.
Yeah.
But I think it's something, we appreciate your overview because I think last year we didn't really get the whole picture of what a fire marshal does and
Right.
the revenue opportunity there to help offset the cost. So I think this was very helpful.
Okay. There were a couple things that, and I wanted to jump ahead a little bit to capital. I understand there might have been a couple questions regarding some of the capital requests, and specifically with regard to turnout gear and bunker gear and the cost for it. And I think, as you heard Chief Taylor said, there's, the cost of gear is pretty expensive. Most firemen are issued two sets of gears. In my capital, in the priority one, I said deputy fire marshal, and it's $10,000, and I understand there might have been a couple questions, why so much? We don't have any gear. We have no gear whatsoever, myself included.
I was the one that asked the question, and I was comparing the $10,000 for the deputy fire marshal to the 4 sets of gear for Flanders Fire for $20,000.
My understanding.
I just wanted to clarify that.
If I may?
Yeah.
I believe some of theirs is replacement, and I will give you a line item of what it costs. $4,980 for a complete set, and that includes station boot, fire boot, bunker coat, bunker pants, helmet, and gloves. I put 10,000 because I need 2 sets.
Okay,
That's why.
That answers
Because
the
again,
question.
and again, out of complete honesty, I wanted to put that in this year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, neither myself nor the deputy has turnout gear. Same thing with those 4 multi-gas meters. We don't have those. And those are things that would clip on your whatever jacket, outer garment, and it gives you readings of when you go into a volatile environment. It gives you explosive levels, it gives you carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide. It basically tells you if it's safe or when it becomes unsafe.
Because you're reporting to a fire for the
Correct,
investigation.
for the investigation, So, but again, in an effort to try to keep this a manageable budget, I put it as a capital expense, but the reality of it is, that should have got proposed this year, but we'll deal with that for next year. And other than that, everything else is just a matter of, and the training, and the training doubled with the anticipation of, went from 5,000 to 10,000 because it would be 2 of us. And again, a brief explanation to that, in order for us, we need to be certified through the state as a fire marshal with fire inspection, fire code, and fire investigation. Every 3 years, we're mandated to have 90 continuing education credits. Additionally, I have an international certification, and I have to, every 5 years, resubmit my CV. We're one of the few investigative branches, if you would, that has the ability to render opinions based on what we do. And in order to do that and to pass it or pass any challenges in a court through a voir dire, we have to maintain and update our CVs and keep them active and current. So, whereas the fire departments have to go for their training, we have to go get tested credits, so to speak, and unfortunately, they're not cheap, so. Yes, sir.
Yes, I remember when the ARPA funds were being distributed, the previous fire marshal.
I'm sorry, what funds?
American Rescue.
Oh, yeah,
Plan
I'm sorry.
funds. The previous fire marshal had applied and received funding. Were those materials purchased or? Oh, okay. Yeah, because Paul and I were sitting on this.
Yeah, 'cause,
I think
that-
you didn't need much, but obviously they do.
One of the things we have talked about at our last selectmen's meeting is we have some ARP funds left, and we wanted to use it for some of that, for one-time purchases that wouldn't be, recurring. And, turnout gear, the gas meters, those are, and I'm going to bring back some recommendations. And those are a couple of things I had to bring back to our board next week. It's not going to be a reformation of the committee.
Right.
This is just for, ways to help offset one-time costs in next year's that would meet the
So we have 5225 available to spend, yeah, that hasn't been touched.
For
Public
turn-
safety, fire safety equipment, that's the title for $5,200, does that sound about right?
That would, we can find that, we can give, so we may have that resource available
I
with
think
this.
I remember him telling us that he didn't really need that much, but like I said, sounds like we do.
Yeah, so it's possible, he left in May, so it's very possible that, yeah, we'll take a look at that and resolve it, so.
And it's nice that you're getting the revenue side. I've
Yeah.
cut checks for enough building permits where I know that there's that fire marshal piece.
Right.
So it's good that we're,
And we have some, currently, we have some big projects that are going on that we kind of lost out on, and that's only going to add on the back end of it when it comes time for the inspections. We got the North Bridebrook, but we recently just got a proposal that we're going to be sitting down with for another affordable housing, which, if this thing were to pass, hopefully we would be able to benefit from that.
Well, I think it's a safety issue, so.
Oh, yeah, it's the same thing with what we're also doing in the building department. We were the lowest in New London County. I think Dave did a good job of explaining that.
Yeah.
And I know when Tracy, our town attorney, was in talking to me Monday, she asked for Dave and Bill's email addresses so because they're working on the ordinance. And definitely moving forward with that, because, and here again, it's only the people who are utilizing services, so, especially when we're talking about, statutory requirements, we most definitely have to make, address that.
Any other questions?
No,
No,
thank you
very
very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, it was a pleasure meeting you all.
Nice to meet you.
Next on the agenda is public discussion.
You are the public.
Seeing no one, we'll move. We're gonna move on to board comments. Anyone have anything for the good of the group? I know we had a late night last night. Nice to break a little bit earlier tonight. So with that, do I have a
motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries.